escalating in our neighborhood, so I decided I was going to protect the house.
Okay.
So one year I went up on the roof,
Uh-huh.
and I hid behind the chimney, so in case somebody came, I had the hose.
Oh.
But I never got to use it. So.
Oh, bummer.
So I don't know what you call that, but I remember doing that once. Anyway, let's get back on task here, shall we? But, the interesting thing, trick-or-treating, from this perspective, and now there's another perspective we'll get into in a few minutes, but this is saying that it's based on a Christian tradition of children walking from village to village, begging for what were called soul cakes, square pieces of bread with currants. Because it had to do with All Souls Day. We'll get into what that is in a little while. That would have made it a current event. Did you get that? Sorry, I know it's early in the morning.
Okay.
Okay, moving right along. Yeah, Rick is not a comedian, and it's a good thing, we say. Keep my day job. Moving right along. Okay, that's a little bit of the American tradition. We'll be touching on that as we go through this. And folks, we just want to lay some groundwork here from traditions before we start taking your calls in. So hang on for that. Let's take a look at the pagan origin of Halloween, the Halloween celebration, because there's a lot to that.
The ancient Celtic fire festivals, and we got this from www.neopagan.net. There appears to have been 4 major holy days celebrated by the Paleopagan Druids, possibly throughout the Celtic territories. These 4 major holy days have been refined to as fire festivals for at least the last 100 years or so, because 1, to the ancient Celts, as with all Indo-European Paleopagans, fire was a physical symbol of divinity, holiness, truth, and beauty. Number 2, fires play important roles in the traditional customs associated with these festivals. And number 3, several early Celtic scholars called them that, whether in Ireland or India, among the Germans or the Hittites. Sacred fires were apparently kindled by the Indo-European Paleopagans on every important religious occasion.
So one of the basic roots of this is it is called one of the 4 Celtic fire festivals, fire being a very important element to this. And Jonathan, let me add that in looking at the origin of Halloween, you can get a lot of different perspectives. The perspective we chose to run with was the most positive perspective that we could find, and we got it, as you had mentioned, from a website that it was a pagan website. So what we were trying to do is say, okay, you know what? Let's give the benefit of the doubt, because you got all this different conflicting information. Let's take it right from a pagan's perspective as to what Halloween really was. And we'll go with that, because you want to be as fair as you possibly can. So let us continue just looking at a little bit more of the history.
All right. Samhain or Samhain,
Well, it's actually called,
is pronounced
Samhain.
Sow, as a female, pig, in, with a natural vowel. So the sound is Samhain.
Right.
So I wanted to say it wrong first, so then I could learn how to say it right.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
But my phonetics are going to have problems with this. It is often said to have been the most important of the fire festivals because, according to most Celtic scholars, it may have marked the Celtic New Year.
Okay, so it may have, again, this is the question, it may have marked the Celtic New Year, and New Year is always an important tradition or celebration. Whether it was the Celtic New Year or not, Samhain was the beginning of the winter or dark half of the year. Now, this is important, and it goes on to say, and we're skipping down to just hit some high points, being between seasons or years, Samhain was and is considered a very magical time when the dead walk among the living, and the veils between past, present, and future may be lifted by prophecy and divination. It's pretty interesting, okay? And again, we're going to just take a few more minutes, read a few more pieces of history here just to lay some groundwork. There is some evidence to indicate that 3 days were spent celebrating this festival. Samhain from the 31st of October to November 2nd was a time of no time. Celtic society, like all early societies, was highly structured and organized. Everyone knew their place. But to allow that order to be psychologically comfortable, the Celts knew there had to be a time when order and structure were abolished, when chaos could reign. I want to come back to that because I've got to question that. But anyway, Samhain was such a time. Time was abolished for 3 days of this festival, and people did crazy things. Men dressed as women and women as men. And what's so crazy about that in this day? I'm not sure. I guess I better just keep reading, okay?
Yes.
Farmers' gates were unhinged and left in ditches. People's horses were moved to different fields. Children would knock on neighbors' doors for food and treats in a way that we still find today, in a watered-down way, in the custom of trick-or-treating on Halloween. But behind this apparent lunacy lay a deeper meaning. The Druids knew that these 3 days had a special quality about them. The veil between this world and the world of the ancestors was drawn aside on these nights, and for those who were prepared, journeys could be made in safety to the other side. The Druid rites, therefore, were concerned with making contact with the spirits of the departed, who were seen as sources of guidance and inspiration rather than as sources of dread. The dark moon, the time when no moon can be seen in the sky, was the phase of the moon which ruled this time, because it represents a time in which our moral sight needs to be obscured in order for us to see into other worlds. And I read it that it was our mortal sight, not our moral, but our mortal sight needs to be obscured in order for us to see into the other worlds. So there's a little bit of history there, Fred. Why don't we go into a break right now? When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about a little bit of that history, try to put it into some perspective, and then take a scriptural look at what we're talking about.
This is Jonathan and Rick with Christian Questions on News Talk 102.3 FM, WXLM. Is Halloween happy? Grab your Bibles. Don't go away. We'll be right back.